Okay. So today we will discuss about the Java exceptions and the type of errors what we have and how do we use these keywords and all to use this Java exceptions errored out. Okay. So under this Java exception, what are these exceptions actually? So exception, the word itself, it says that it's something unique apart from the normal flow. So when we are going through a flow, if there is a problem or if there is any error that arises during our execution of the program, then this error which is thrown is known as exception. So when an exception occurs in the normal flow of the program, which is disrupting or which is disturbing the flow, then it is treated as abnormal. And this abnormal thing, whatever is coming out as an output, is known as exception. So, how are these exceptions usually handled? So, what is the reason of having an exception in our program? So, what does it says is the exception which is occurred due to many reasons. It can be any reason, but general exceptions that occurs is like the first exception would be an invalid data. So, when you are trying to give an input as string to an variable which is declared as int, you get as a invalid data or invalid assessment exception. And sometimes when you're trying to open a file which is not of the same what do you say, same type, like if you're trying to open a ppt in word, it will not accept. And if you're trying to open an unknown file and it says there is an error in to open this file, invalid format or unknown format. So this is the second exception. And a third exception, just a second guys, I'm getting a call, just a second please. So when we are trying to I mean when we are trying to run a program and in middle of something you lose the connection. So this network connection which is lost during our memory, this is also an exception. And sometimes what happens is when we try to work on this program and there is some disturbance where the file is lost and we are trying to pull that file which is not present in the folder, then it shows some exceptions. These are all different types of exceptions which are caused by known errors or program errors or a physical resource which can be called, but due to the failed response, these exceptions occur. And based on such type of categories, these exceptions are actually divided into three types. That is checked exception. So I'll give you the definition of the exception. Please do. So definition of exception, it says an exception which is a problem that arises during the execution of the program. So when it is occurring generally in the normal flow, it disrupts the program and it terminates abnormally. Okay. So this is and the types of exceptions are checked exceptions, unchecked exceptions, and error. These are the three types where we have been divided, where this exceptions are divided into three categories. Those are checked exceptions, unchecked exceptions, and errors. Okay. So these are the three types of exceptions. So under checked exception. So what is checked exceptions? So when a checked exception is occurring by the compiler during a compilation time, these are also called as compilation time errors. So when you're see, we usually had this exception yesterday when we are trying to declare a class with I mean abstract class, and we are trying to create an object, then we got an exception when we are trying to compile it itself. So this comes under checked exceptions. So these exceptions are generally known exceptions, which Java knows it technically and throws as a technical error. So these exceptions are known as compiled exceptions. So these actually occur due to compilation errors itself. Compilation exceptions. Okay. And see, if example you have it, that is when you're trying to create an object. Okay. And the second exception is unchecked exceptions. So in this unchecked exceptions, these are actually runtime exceptions. So during compilation, they get compiled perfectly, there will be no error. While we are trying to compile it, there will be no error. But when you're trying to run it, then you get those exceptions. These are known as runtime exceptions. So during your projects, like when you get into a company and when you start working on a project, compilation errors will be common for a developer. So who sits and develop the program, these errors will be seen. But these errors are something which you get it after the production, like the code which you built is into usage, and everybody starts using that program, or everybody start using that application. So when they started using them, there will be some type of runtime exception suddenly occurring, and that has to be supported by one person. Like there will be other team who will be supporting it continuously. So these type of runtime exceptions will be caught by those team, and they have to actually sit and monitor each and every log whether they are getting any runtime exceptions or not. So that is the part of support work, and the part of developer work would be usually with the compilation exceptions. So these are two types of exceptions: compilation and runtime. So when you just look at a program, or when you just write a program, you don't find any type of error. It seems to be okay. But when you try to execute it, then only you get these exceptions, unchecked exceptions. So suppose the error would be something like, yeah, we used this uh, limit, right? We used limits, and then when we are trying to exceed the limit, then it showed us a runtime exception saying that this number cannot be taken as final. Yeah, fine. For the final keyword, we give final int x is equal to this thing. Then when you're trying to give x greater than the limit which we give, then it throws an error saying that this cannot be taken as sorry, it won't throw error, it just displays whatever we give. So that is not a runtime exception. But okay, so if we declare an array, there is an array of number, and we are declaring the numbers as 1 2 3 4. and we are trying to print a number of 5. So as I said you, the array starts from 0, 1, 2, 3. I mean, you're getting it right, guys, or do you want me to show it? So example, what we can say is I have declared a number array which is equal to 1, comma 2, comma 3, comma 4. So this is my number array. So what is number of 0? Number of 0 is 1. Number of 1 is 2. Number of 2 is 3. Number of 3 is 4. So I have only the length of my array is only 4. That is number of 3 is last. Number of 3 is equal to how much? What is number of 3? Can anyone tell me what is number of 3? What is the value? If I want to print number of 3, what is the value I get?
2.
Number of 3 is 2. Okay, what is number of 0?
Okay, sorry ma'am, 4.
Yeah, so number of 3 is 4. So, but what I do is I system output the value number of 4. So while compiling it, it don't seem to be any array. It will just take it as the value. Okay, but while executing the program, this number 4 is not existing. We had only number of 3. So this number 4 is not getting executed. So it throws an error during our exception. So it says the array index out of bound exception. You must have heard about this, but later on when you're trying to work on this, you will get this exception. The exception would be this. Array index out of bounds exception. So this is about the unchecked exceptions. So checked exceptions, which are technical exceptions which are directly given. And unchecked exceptions are those exceptions which are not given during a compilation but during our execution. And errors are not exceptions. Errors are not generally exceptions, but errors are something which where there is a problem, there arises a problem, but it is not defined into the system, it is not defined into the technical system backend, but the user knows what we knows. So see, if you are trying to have a semicolon not given, or if you're trying to have more number of flower bases, these type of errors are known as general errors. So these are typically ignored in your code because you can rarely do anything about an error. Sometimes these errors cannot be ignored. They have to just ignore it and then go forward with the compilation. Okay. So this is all about exception and types of exception. And now we go with the exception hierarchy. So how this actually exception is pulling out from the system. Now we understood that there are some exceptions and system knows about the exception and they are trying to post the exception. But how is it working? How is it trying to pull the exception from the backend? So we have our libraries, right? Java.u, whatever the imports we do, we have some libraries. So this whole libraries have some hierarchy from where this exception is getting pulled out. So this we'll learn about this exception hierarchy now. So all this type of exceptions, which are all the type of exception classes, whatever are there, are all subtypes of Java dot lang dot exception. So these are generally coming from Java dot lang dot exception. So this is the class in which the Java exceptions are present. So this is a subclass of the throwable class. So we have exception is an exception. Again, you'll need to have a class called throwable class where this exception gets thrown from the outside. So this is a throwable class, is a subclass of the throwable class. So you have exception class, which is a subclass of throwable class. So there is an exception class, but over that we have a subclass, which is throwable class. So this is the throwable class, and this is my exception class. Okay. Fine. You understood, right? I'm unable to edit it. So this is what known as exception hierarchy. So in exception hierarchy, the exception class is a subclass of throwable class. Other than exception class, we have like another exception class also. I mean another class as a subclass under the throwable, which is known as error. And this is also derived from the throwable class itself. So I will be having another subclass differently, not into the exception error. They are not subclasses again. So there is a different class. So this is error class and this is exception class. So in the throwable class itself, I have two types of classes again, two subclasses. So errors are like abnormal conditions that occur which we cannot handle. The Java programs cannot handle. They're just generated by the runtime and we ignore it sometimes. Okay, so basically you can actually understand with this. So this is basically the tree structure where you can easily understand the classes of exception. So java.lang is a library from which we are creating an object, and in which there is a class called throwable class. In this throwable class, you have two types of classes, that is error classes and exception classes. Under exception classes, we already have learned that there are two types of exceptions, that is runtime exception and checked exceptions, like compilation exceptions. So you have different types of exception methods. So exception methods are like so we have one method which is known as, I mean, there are actually six methods. So one method would be get message error, which gives us a message. It returns a detailed message about the exception that has occurred, and this message is initialized in the throwable constructor itself. So we use this throwable class, and we get this exception known as uh, so this is one of the method which is known as get message. What does it do is it returns us a message which is it gives us the message of the exception that has occurred, and it that is generally used or directly we get it from the compilation time itself. So this is the message which we, I mean, this is a method we use. And the next is public throwable get class. This is on another type of method. In this it returns the cause of the exception. Why is it actually caused? Where it caused? This type of this type of constructor or this type of method, when we call, we get the cause of the exception. And the next method is string to string. So it is like two string error exception. In this, we return the name of the class which is like concatenated or which is used to concatenate the messages. So you're getting one error. You got a compilation error. You want to handle it manually. You want to name that error, which is with your own language. So then you use this concatenated. This type of method is dragged, and then you will be concatenating the message which is coming from the system plus your message, your normal message. So that is how this string to string, I mean, to string is used. Okay. And then the next method that is under this exception method is print stack trace. What does this method do is it prints as the result of two strings or along with the stack trace of the system error. So whatever the error which is there in the system which is generated, it prints as the complete system, complete trace of the error, where it is coming from and how it is coming from. Whole the trace of complete system will be, system error will be printed if you use this print stack. And the next method which we use is public stack trace element. That is this is also a part of the stack trace itself, but we get exact stack trace of element where we have this error which is containing the list of the errors, I mean errors, right? So we get an array which is containing this elements, and this prints as complete stack and complete end-to-end errors exceptions. So it is known as public stack trace element. In that array, we have to pull out the get stack trace. So this is the method. The stack trace element is a type of class, and the get stack trace is the method which we have to pull out. And the next method is filling stack trace. So this also is a type of object that has to be thrown from the throwable class only, but it what help us to do is it fills the stack trace. So whatever we adding, no, whatever the errors we want, we can actually try to get them completely and fill it in the stack trace. So it is like from the same throwable class directly, public throwable, fill in stack trace. Okay, this is the method which is used to fill the stack. So this is all about the throwing of exceptions, and how are we actually dividing these exceptions. So the next topic would be our caching of these exceptions. So under catching exceptions, these exceptions, whatever we have been generated or whatever we are trying to get them, we have to actually catch them. So to do this, we use two types of keywords. Those are try and catch. So under this, we have the keywords which are known as try and catch. Try and catch are those two keywords which are used to catch the exceptions that are actually thrown by the throwable method. So this try catch block which is placed in the code that generates that exception. So you can write it anywhere of the code at the end of the code. So whenever you're trying to get the block ended, there you can write this try catch code. So when you're writing this try, you have to have a code where we are trying to pull out the exception, and in the catch you have to give the exception name and catch the exception. The syntax would be try flower base open close catch with the exception name flower base open and close. So it is like try small t and catch with the exception name. We are trying to put it in some of the variable and catch it. Okay, so this is the exception block. I mean, a try catch block. So generally, when you're trying to write a program, you will get to know that this part of block would have some exceptions. So what we do is we put that type of exceptions wherever we want to catch it. We'll try to put this in the code. So for the example, there is some query, like you are trying to pull a data from the backend, and you know whether the table, you don't know whether the table is empty or it is having some data. But there is a query to run on it, and that query doesn't give you any errors, but you will have to catch it. So when if it is throwing any error, then you will have to catch it. If it is not giving any output, then you will have to catch it as an error. So that is how this try catch block is useful. So in the try, you will write this query, and you will say if you are finding any zero elements or if you are finding any errors, then you give it to the catch block, and in that catch block you will write the complete exception which states that there is no record or no records found or null records found. Something such type of exceptions will be caught on this catch block. So this is the example of try catch thing. And yeah, so we will do this program, one of the program where we have taken this example, right? How do we this num of 1, 2, 3, 4. So we are trying to pull out this num. There is a exception found. So what type of exception is found and how are we going to do it in try catch blocks? We will see it in our compiler. So also guys, we have different types of multiple catches also. So we can actually do multiple try catch blocks at the same time. So we are trying to use the import program also because now we have to have our exceptions handled. Okay, so this is one of the exception handled session. I mean import library. So in my method, what I will write is I'll write a try block. So I'll try in which I will initialize my int num, which is equal to array of 1, comma 2, comma 3, comma 4. Okay. Now I will try to do a system output and I will try to print my num of 4. So num of 4, does it exist, guys?
No, ma'am.
Yeah, so num of 4 does not exist, so it should throw an error, and what that error we will be trying to catch it in our catch block. So a catch, and I will give you I'll give you the exception. So this is the exception. I'm catching that type of exception only in this catch block. So I'll do a system output here. So I'll print whatever the exception he is handling. It will print that exception. Okay. Okay. So this is what I mean this is what I'm trying to do in the exception block. So I'll try to run this program. Okay, this compiler is already having the inbuilt exception. I mean inbuilt import, so I need not to import it again. You can actually import it from Java directly. Mhm. Not trying to take it. Okay. So it says index 4 out of bonds for length 4. So I'm having length as 4. Just a second, guys. So guys, uh, so this is what exception. This is the general exception which is thrown by the Java, and this is the exception which is actually needed. I mean, what is causing this exception is the this is the what gives us the cause of the exception, and this is the exception which no which is stated as an exception. So it says index 4 out of bonds for length 4. So we are giving 4, that is why it says index 4. We are giving 4 value, that is why it is taking the bond length is 4, but you're giving it as 4. Okay. So we have only the length is 4, but the index which we are using is out of the bond. So out of the length. Okay, so this is one of our example where we can actually use try catch, both the try catch methods in the exception block. So we even have multiple blocks, multiple catch blocks where you can actually use different type of errors at the same time, and you can actually declare them. So apart from this multiple blocks, we have, I mean, multiple throw catches. Then we have throw block. We have try catch block. Now we even have throw block where it directly throws the unchecked exception. It directly handles the unchecked exceptions only. It does not handle the checked exceptions. That is compilation exceptions. Throw only handles the runtime exceptions. So this throw keywords appears at the end of the method, and this keyword, by using this keyword, we actually throws the exception, or whatever the exception during our runtime is invoking our program. It does the exception thrown at the end of the block. So after this try catch, we have throw. Generally, the throw is something simple. It just have keyword as throw. It doesn't have much than that. It is just used as a throw keyword. And we have to throw a remote exception which is run during our runtime. Okay. This is about the throw block, and throw block can be written at the end of the point or even at the main point. So when you're trying to declare a method, some method, there only you can actually write throws remote exception, and then you have to create object of that. So the next block would be the finally block. So this finally block is executed, what matter it happens or whatever exception happens, this finally block will be executed after the try catch block. So you will have try catch, which are exception name and exception. Then okay, so after this you have this finally block. So finally block generally get executed even if the try catch block has any exceptions or anything happens. This block will gets executed at the end, and finally what itself says, it is executed finally. So we have some more part of this exception. So like try with resources and user defined exceptions. User defined exceptions are nothing but whatever you want to produce as an exception, right? So that type of exception can be used under user defined functions. Like if I say you're trying to you're trying to have a amount, I mean transfer, and when you're trying to pull out the data from a bank, I mean you're trying to pull out amount from the bank, and if you have only 10 rupees and if you're trying to pull 100 rupees, withdraw 100 rupees, it says insufficient balance. So this insufficient point is not a known to Java. Java doesn't know what does this mean. So what does it do? We have to throw an exception manually stating that if my amount, if whatever I'm withdrawing, if my amount is less than my input amount, then you have to throw this error. So this type of errors, whatever you want to manually include in the Java program, it has to be used using the throw block, or finally block, whichever you're sufficient with. Okay, so there are different types of exceptions. Just go back to the I mean your sources. Just try to find what are different types of exceptions and how are we handling them. So these exceptions generally you will try to understand when you start your project, but as of now try finding different type of exceptions in Google, and get a self note of all those. Okay. Okay, guys. So this is all about the class. So just go back to your Google and try searching different type of exceptions. So as of now, we have learned one of the exception as index out of bound. So you can have different type of exceptions known. You can just read what is the type of exception and where does it occur. How does it? I mean, what made it to be occurring, or what is the cause of that exception, and everything. Okay. So any doubts